Hey there, and welcome to the virtual roundtable preparing for the inevitable DDoS trends and mitigation strategies, hosted by our friends at Nexusguard. I'm Dean Perrine, Executive Vice President of JSA, and welcome viewers to the roundtable. In this roundtable, our panelists will discuss the changing face of DDoS attacks and what you can do about them, including a comprehensive and actionable plan to both mitigate DDoS attacks and monetize your anti-DDoS solution while retaining key customers and attracting new customers to your network and services. A couple of quick housekeeping notes really quickly here. If you have any questions, feel free to type them into the question field throughout the virtual roundtable, and we will do our best to get through as many as possible in the allotted time. We've only got an hour, so there's a lot to get through, so let's go ahead and get started. It is my pleasure to introduce our panelists and experts from Nexusguard. They are Mr. Donnie Chong. Donnie is the Product Director at Nexusguard. Mr. Xenophon Giannis, Xenophon is, or Zen as we like to call him, is the Vice President at Nexusguard, and Mr. Alex Hisa. Alex is the Senior Sales Director at Nexusguard. Okay, team, before we get started, let's go ahead and get everyone included, including our viewers, presumably at home, many of you, with our first poll. The first poll is this: do you know what a bit and piece attack is? The question is, do you know what a bit and piece attack is? I will give everyone 10, 20 seconds to get their answer in here. I have made my answer. All right, we will give our behind the scenes team a look. Hey, how about that? 77% of our attendees said that they do not know what a bit and piece attack is. Zen, does that surprise you at all?
Not at all. It's fairly new. So.
How about you, Alex? Is the 77% surprising to you?
No, it makes sense.
Okay, so we're going to get to that in just a moment. I'm going to jump right into the questions. Zen, we're going to go ahead and start with you. Where do we stand today? What is the current state of DDoS attacks?
Okay, thanks, Dean. Well, basically, we just put out our Q1 threat report for 2020, which has been a little bit unique, which we have unique circumstances because nothing's normal. But what we've seen, the patterns we've seen this last, the first 3 months of 2020, because, so the pandemic kind of hit right about the middle, like February, March. So what we noticed in March and April, we had an unusual increase in DDoS attacks that we haven't seen normally. So year over year, it was a 280% increase, and then quarter over quarter, it was almost from Q3, or actually Q4 of last year, almost 550% increase. So that's a lot. And usually Q1 is off season, so we're not really expecting a lot of attacks. Like, people take a break, after the holidays. Even the DDoSers don't want to be hitting everybody. If they were attacking people during all the holiday stuff and Christmas, things like that, things kind of settle down. Not a lot of stuff going on. So it was unusual. And what we think is that because more people are working from home, even the DDoSers are bored, and there's a lot more easy targets available. Now, the motives behind the attacks that we've seen, they're usually three categories, right? So they're usually either politically motivated, retaliatory, or some kind of organized crime. One of the politically motivated ones we saw on March 15th, the Department of Health and Human Services in the United States was hit with a major attack, and it impacted all their online services. And we're pretty certain that was done on purpose to make a point, right? So, that was March 15th, right in the middle of the pandemic. People are upset that they're not getting the services they need. And it was, I don't think a group took responsibility, but pretty sure it was politically motivated. The retaliatory attacks can be employees or just someone that's not happy. So like I said, so maybe you could say that the other attack was also retaliatory because somebody didn't get a COVID test or something. And online attacks are usually between the organized crime. It's almost like, you know, Russian gambling rings or extortion or things like that. So something that's organized and they're trying to, usually it's monetarily motivated. What we also noticed was that ISPs have now become a focal point of attacks. So because the working from home is now the new norm, because the trend of attacks employed, they're overwhelmingly like focused at ISPs directly. And the traffic patterns that we're seeing from the ISPs is that they're having an overwhelming amount of infected devices on their network. So because IoT is on the rise, a lot of those aren't secure. There's a lot of open resolvers on these ISPs. Now, and one of the reasons we think so is because ISPs traditionally, when you're talking about business ISPs, business network, there's a certain level of security that goes along with those. But now everybody's moved to the residential networks. Residential networks have a different kind of quality of service that, status quo, right? You're not really worried as much about, uptime, things like that, because it's just residential users. But now maybe the whole C-level staff is at home on a residential network. So, you're seeing, there's open resolvers, meaning like DNS servers, things like that, that are there and are available to be compromised. And so not only are the target of an attack, they're also being utilized to launch attacks. An open resolver attack, which is like an amplification attack where you reflect off like a DNS server, it can be as bad, even though it seems very small, because it amplifies, it could be as equivalent of like a 57 gig attack for a 2-hour period. So one of the other things that we've noticed though, in general, and this is something that, because you always hear in the media, attacks, basically attacks at least 1 to 5 gigs. We're about 90, 10 gigs and below. We're about 98% of all attacks that we saw, right? There was a good percentage, like I guess 10 or 15% that were 1 gig and below, but we didn't see very many that were in the ones that always make the press, right? So, but just because they're small doesn't mean that they're not dangerous, right? And that's one of the things that we've noticed is people oftentimes, they discount the smaller attacks because they think, well, it's just a 1 gig attack, it's a 2 gig attack. But what we're noticing is that causes a lot of damage to their customers. Maybe not so much to the ISP's network, but still causes them pain because of lost revenue and customers that get upset. We call that the small but deadly attack, right? So, it's a 1 gig to 5 gig attack. Sometimes they last less than 15 minutes. Sometimes it's less than 200 events per day per ISP. But we call it, it's also called an invisible killer because they occur daily. They're a nuisance, but they're usually overlooked because it's not detrimental to the ISP. And traditionally, ISPs always look for, hey, keep the network up, keep the routers up, don't have an outage, keep the revenue flowing. But that's changed over the past 5 years because not so much just keep the network up, it's also keep the customer up. So whereas the network doesn't go down, the customer probably goes down, their services go down, their business goes down, and then they turn to the ISP and say, hey, what are you doing for me? You need to keep me up. If you're not going to, someone else will. And the other risk that the ISP has is if they ignore these attacks, it still can create a bottleneck and take down some of their services. Going back to what I said earlier about the local attacks, the residential networks, they are less resilient to these kind of attacks. So before, where a residential network was getting all these little, kids that are gaming, attacking each other, now what we're seeing is that, attacks against these networks that are a little more sophisticated because more people are on the networks are knocking the routers over and they're having a major regional outage because it wasn't set up to be a business grade network. So it's harder to ignore these attacks. As you have business people at home, they're expecting a better amount of service. So the ISPs have been actually very busy and scrambling just to even upgrade infrastructure, forget about DDoS, just to maintain and sustain the capacity they need in these neighborhoods. We've been noticing that the attack for ISPs is an ongoing trend. It's going up. Yeah, like I said, their infrastructure it has been getting a deluge of attacks, and the main point of this is that ISPs need to realize is customers are demanding managed services that protect them, right? And that's the new trend, right? It's no longer, hey, what was my uptime? It's look, I don't care if your network's up, I'm not up. What are you going to do for me? One of the other attacks, speaking about ISPs in general, is the bit and piece attack, also known as the carpet bombing attack. What we've noticed is that this attack has gained popularity over the last 18 months. It's a very sneaky, nasty attack. It really is only against ISPs. And basically what it does is, this has been designed by very brilliant attackers to go below the thresholds of detection. So they know exactly where you have an Arbor device in the network that at 300 megabits on an IP number will trigger an alert. Well, what they've done is they go, okay, well, we're going to send 200 megabits per IP number, and then we're going to basically roll it across several /24s, so 256 IPs back and forth, almost like a sprinkler that's sprinkling along, going back and forth. They're doing that consistently. So there's two things. One, doesn't trigger any alerts on any DDoS mitigation you have. Secondly, when you do manually see it, it moves. So it's moving back and forth. So the IP number that you would have tried to mitigate no longer is affected. It's gone over to the next one. Now, okay, 200 megs, not that much. But if you do it against, 1,000 IP numbers, that's a rather large attack, because it converges. It still can knock out the router. It still can do other things. So what's been happening, and one of the trends that we see, is that ISPs come to us and they're like, look, my mitigation's not working. We don't understand. We have this in-house box. And the reason is because it was designed by someone that knows exactly what they have in place to bypass everything they have in place. So we're seeing that trending up. In Q1, we saw a total of 110 ISP ASNs that were hit by bit and piece attacks, and it's just been rising. Like, it's been gaining popularity. It's kind of getting out of the know now. So less sophisticated people are learning how to do it. They go to that DDoS webinar and they start on the dark net and start learning how to do things. Those are the main things. The other things, the attack sources by distribution, obviously, surprise, surprise, China's #1 at 53%. We came in at a low second at 13%, and then Russia at 8% of where the attacks start from. And then the two main attacks that we see, and really the #1 is the UDP attack. 75% of all attacks we saw were UDP floods, and they were single vector, most of them. The reason that UDP floods are used is because they can overwhelm a target quickly. They're volumetric, but they're used as a smokescreen to mask other malicious activities. So, for example, you throw a big, huge 60 gig attack at an enterprise or a network, and at the same time, you're doing a cross-site script, or you're trying to hack in on the backside and trying to steal either personal information, credit card numbers, social security numbers, or you're injecting malware attacks into the network. And while everybody's worried about the house is on fire, you're in the back in the back door doing all sorts of things that they're not noticing. So that's one of the strategies they have for that. And the second one, which not so big, but still 11%, that's a lot, is the DNS amplification attacks. That's the open resolvers we were talking about, where the attack comes in, you ask for any, like you'll go into it, you're like, hey, give me the DNS for this, for whatever it is. Instead of just saying for one, you ask for any. So you put in one request, one packet of data, and 50 come out. And so you're able to take a 1 gig attack and turn it into a 50 gig attack by hitting enough open resolvers. So that's really what's been causing a lot of problems. Now, open resolvers, if ISPs did best practice, we could slow this down, but it's also something to notice. Like, you could be part of the problem if people are actually able to go in and abuse your open resolvers for your DNS especially. So just basic conclusions that we saw this quarter. like I said, abnormal a number of attacks. We think that's COVID related. We're noticing that the small attacks are actually causing problems that have been normally ignored. And we think that DDoS attackers are leveraging that because they know that most times they'll be ignored. So they've been making them annoying but not deadly. And the advent of IoT devices that are continually being released and getting compromised because they're not really locked down well is also causing an increase of like new botnets. The last piece is that we know a solution would be for all the government entities like Interpol, whatever, to get together and try to help crack down on some of these DDoS attacks and crime. We don't see that happening anytime soon. We don't see everyone coming together, kumbaya, let's go get all these attackers. So really it's within the ISP themselves to protect themselves and within their communities, like groups like Nanog or Aaron, where they share best practice, they share information, they share blacklists, they share attacks that they've seen, and then basically solve the problem within the community. Because if you're going to wait for the police to come, you're going to be waiting a long time. So that's the trends that we see, Dean.
Thanks, Zen. That was a very thorough examination of kind of where we're at right now. Clearly, there's a lot going on. We're seeing surges. We're seeing lots of different types of attacks, big and small. Some of the small ones getting maybe a little bit neglected, but still very impactful to folks. But what about mitigation strategies? So, like as all of this stuff is happening, let's talk a little bit about what those mitigation strategies are, some of the more common mitigation strategies, and maybe a little bit about kind of the weaknesses as they exist today. Zen, back to you.
Yeah. Well, so what I usually tell customers when they ask us to do an evaluation of their network, I mean, okay, you can mitigate DDoS. There's several different ways to skin the cat. What ISPs need to decide is, what are you trying to protect? What's important to you? What are the valuable assets that are being protected? Is it your network? Is it your routers? Is it your infrastructure? Is it your IP space? Is it your customers? Is it your customer's application? All these, every single one of those answers is a different mitigation strategy, right? And so what's happened is, it's almost like the firewall model. It's like, oh, we got a firewall, we're covered. Well, DDoS is not the same way, because whether if it's a network layer attack, it's layer 3, 4. That is a much different strategy than an application layer 7 attack. Plus, if you're protecting your infrastructure as an ISP, you're concerned about your network being up, not your customers. But if your customer wants to be up, then you're protecting their routers as opposed to yours, as well as yours as well. So the couple different, in that light strategies, there's the on-prem device, right? I bought a firewall, I put it in. I bought a DDoS device, I put it in. That can work. The great thing about an on-prem device, it's inline. It gets good alerting and detection. It knows what's going on in the network at all times. It's fast to react. It can mitigate attacks. The problems with an on-prem device alone is if an attack comes in that's larger than your upstream capacity, it's going to block upstream, or your upstream providers or peers are going to block the attack, basically null route, and so you're still going to come offline. Because let's say you've got 20 gig attack come in and you've got 20 gigs of upstream capacity, that's going to be full. The box won't be able to do what it's supposed to do. The other problem with that is you're going to need several different boxes for different types of attacks. If it's a layer 7, you're going to need an application layer device, as opposed for your customers. You need a layer 3, 4 device, almost like an Arbor TMS or one of those for the network layer. And then if you're doing web application firewall, you need a WAF device of some sort that will do all those protections. So that's an issue. There's the cloud-based only, which folks like ourselves, Akamai, tons of the new stars, they all provide a cloud-only kind of solution where it's network layer, and you run a BGP, you swing over the traffic, goes to this there's several global scrubbing centers. In our case, we have 9. So we'd come in there, scrub the traffic, we give the clean traffic back out. Great thing about that, usually large capacity. You know, we have 2.4 terabits. That's pretty much standard. People anywhere from the range of 1 terabit to 6 terabits is what people say that they can consume, which is more than enough. But the issue there, one, it's not in line. So there's latency from detection to reaction. Usually time to mitigate 15 plus minutes, depending on the time it takes to swing traffic, things like that.
I'm going to jump into our next question. Let's talk about the network versus the customer. There are common challenges that I'm sure that you folks have seen for ISPs, CSPs, for protecting the network versus protecting that customer. Can you talk about those challenges?
Sure. Well, like I was saying before, I don't know where I got cut off, but traditionally the ISP is looking to protect their infrastructure, right? So what we've seen also happening is that the solutions of yesterday are now trying to become the solutions for today, and it's not a very good fit, because if you've been out and bought a ton of Arbor in the past to protect your network or any other devices, they work great for your network. They're not set up to protect your customer. You know, back in the days when I was working at AboveNet, the old ISPs, we didn't care about the customer's network. We only cared about our network. We wanted to keep the network up at all costs, and that's it. DDoS was your problem, Mr. Customer. You're probably, a spammer or something. Well, that's changed now. It's become more mainstream, and the customers are, like I said, requiring it. So what was a sunk cost in the past, the ISPs are now saying, okay, yeah, we have DDoS. Yes, Mr. Customer, we can protect you too. But it's not set up to be a fit like that. Yes, you're providing almost, clean pipe. So what you give to the customer is, you can say there's no DDoS on it, but it's not set up to be profiled around their traffic. It's not necessarily productized for them. So, being able to basically you're going from being a network that has DDoS protection to becoming a managed security services provider, right? And that's what customers want. They don't want to deal with it. They want you to take care of it. They want you to have a SOC. They want you to, the DDoS comes and you take care of it, and they just keep doing what they do. So that's a challenge, because if you're going to do it in-house, you have to buy more boxes. You have to, and most ISPs we've seen are trying to separate, right? They go, well, this is our network, this is the customer's network, this is for the customer product. So we have 2 different groups running it. This is a product, this isn't. So they have to decide how they're going to do it. They have to set up, if they only have a NOC, they have to set up kind of a SOC, and it's a much different game plan. You have to hire engineers that know how to, that are relevant with DDoS, which is expensive as well. And then it takes a while to burn it all in. So there's costs. We've seen a lot of customers, they go out and they buy all the gear. They're good for their network, things like that. Then they start trying to provide it as a service. Big attack comes in. They have no clue how to do it because it's something they haven't seen. It's more of a customer level attack rather than an ISP level attack. So they really haven't seen it, and it's a disaster. So, the challenge is make versus buy, right? I mean, are you going to hire somebody to kind of do it as a managed service? Are you going to do a combination of the two? Are you going to have your staff do part of it? Can you afford to do any of it? So the challenge is, how do you stay relevant? How do you meet the needs of the customers? Also, a lot of the customers now, they're moving hybrid cloud, right? They're half on your network, half on someone else's network. How do you help them be protected in all of that? Because like I said, they don't really care what your problems are. They're like, hey, I want my network protected, and I want my applications protected. So how are you going to help me? So that's pretty much in a nutshell the challenges. And then we have some customer examples. I think actually, Alex, you have some examples of some of your customers in Latin America that we had. You want to tell us a little about that?
Yeah,
Sure.
Zen, you're actually segueing better than I could myself. That would exactly my next. We talk about these challenges, and we talk about those your partners. But how about some real world examples? And Alex, go ahead.
Sure. I'll be glad to. So, Brazil or Latin America is a unique market. They have um, a regulatory environment where it allows, you know, more than maybe 16,000 ISPs to operate, and there's different levels of it. At the top level, you have the big, I would say the big 4 or 5, and then you know the mid range you have a bunch of providers that are competing against the larger ones, but they also have, you know, downstreams that are service providers. They're more regional, very small providers. I would say that's the rest of the ecosystem there. The challenge is, as Zen was indicating, is that they are trying to protect their own networks, but they also need to protect the customers' networks and perhaps applications. So, you know, with the lack of expertise, uh, you know, maybe in South America, but we've seen that around the world, with the lack of expertise and, you know, limited budgets just to start up a DDoS practice. They've turned to somebody like Nexusguard and said, you know, what can you offer? Is it a managed solution? What do I have to do? You know, what resources do I need to start up a DDoS practice? And oftentimes, you know, these customers come to us because they're being attacked. So they're it's an emergency situation. They need to have some kind of protection. And I think, you know, we've been able to provide that type of protection and management, not only to protect their infrastructure, but to be very specific and very precise in mitigating attacks against their customers, which is a huge differentiator.
Gotcha. Zen, anything to add to that?
No, I mean, you know, I mean, basically, you know, like Alex said, it's we're seeing more and more of the customers come to us and say, hey, how do we add this? We're going to lose business if we don't have it. Help us. And you know, either they've tried something else or they're coming straight out of the, you know, just fresh, because usually the number one thing is a big deal is on the table and the customer's saying, I need DDoS mitigation and it needs to be this. If you don't have it, you're out. And so money talks, and then the executives scramble and they go, get us a DDoS strategy so we don't lose this business. And then that ends up, you know, driving the business. Otherwise, otherwise it's like, okay, you know, we'll get there when we need it. But when they see the money, that's when they take action.
Very good.
Also chime in here a little bit more on, we had another case study, if you will, of an ISP based in Nigeria in Africa. And, you know, if you know the infrastructure there, most providers, they will loop back to London or Amsterdam for connectivity. And there's very few, if any, mitigation scrubbing centers in the continent. So we had one of those ISPs come to us because they wanted something local, number one. Number two, they needed that competitive advantage, right? You don't want to just be selling commodity like colocation or you know, DIA, internet access. And then the other thing is they wanted to have more control. Instead of getting mitigation from an upstream provider that is not meeting the needs, they wanted to have that type of control. So they've worked with us to implement a hybrid solution that has local scrubbing and is managed by the very capable Nexusguard Security Operations Center. And we have a really good partner that's got really good presence in the continent, whereas that wasn't even existing until then.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Let's have a little bit more fun. Let's go back to our webinar attendees with another poll question. The question is, do you feel your current DDoS security posture is adequate for not only today's attacks, but also for increasingly complex attacks that we're starting to see and that Zen was kind of detailing earlier. Again, the question is, do you feel that your current DDoS security posture is adequate for not only today's attacks, but also the attacks of tomorrow? Interesting, kind of split. Some 35% not sure, that makes sense to me. 35% no, that also makes sense to me. So Donnie, what do you think? Does 35% not being sure if their current DDoS security is good enough, and 35% saying no, it's definitely not good enough, does that surprise you at all?
The no doesn't really surprise me, but I guess the group in the 35% aren't really confident about the existing posture, and that's why they are here today to find out what's the new thing that will be plaguing them, and which leads us to the next point of our discussion. What are the common trends and challenges that we will see that will be faced by the CSPs industry in general in the coming years to come.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. Any other thoughts on our recent poll? Alex, what do you think?
No, it's spot on. I mean, the fact is, it's a moving post, right? You don't know where the next attack is going to come from, in what form. So, how can you be sure about your posture when you don't know what's coming? Yeah. And, there's companies that spend millions of dollars in this infrastructure protection, and they're still not able to figure it out. So,
yeah. So let's go ahead and look to the future a little bit. And Donnie, this is for you. As a thought leader in the industry, what does the landscape, what does the DDoS landscape look like, and where do you see it going?
Yeah. So I think Alex and Zen has touched a bit on this in the earlier conversation. So what's very obvious to us and to the industry is, DDoS attacks are here to stay. And not only are they larger than ever before, over the past 10, 15 years, they've been consistently growing in size. They are also more sophisticated, and the attackers are now so innovative. Rightfully, Zen has pointed out that these guys are very innovative and very smart. And we see that this problem will only continue to get worse. Okay, it will get worse. And what we have seen increasingly as well is that while CSP might not be the intended targets themselves, because of these new up-and-coming attacks, these innovative attacks that is crafted to take down the CSPs are now getting more and more impacted by DDoS attacks, especially with the beat and pierce attack or the carpet bomb attack that Zen has brought up earlier. So when we first discovered this attack, okay, when it first came out, it was like towards the end of 2018, and it's been 2 years now. And 2 years later today, a lot of CSPs are still plagued by this attack. They don't really have a solution. And that's just because, like what Zen has explained, this attack is purposely crafted to take advantage of the architecture and the design of how ISPs are set up. And then, of course, designed to attack places whereby the current traditional mitigation strategies will not be able to address based on all those the signatures of the attack. And the fact is, we are seeing more and more of such attacks emerging. Okay, especially within the past 1 or 2 years. Okay, we've seen a lot of new attacks that is purposely crafted, to fly under the radar, or or maybe purposely crafted for a specific CSP, whereby they hover at the gray area where the CSPs can't decide to do something about it, or maybe because of the profile of the attack, they can't do anything much about it with their current strategy and their technology. And what this means is, for the CSPs, in the past, where their infrastructures are robust, big, and attacks were small, back in those days, they can largely ignore this problem, and then pass that problem on to the customer for themselves to, get their own solution. I think with the trends that we are seeing nowadays, CSPs is now forced to rethink that strategy. That is no longer possible because the DDoS is becoming a problem that is already too big to ignore. That's one of the trends that we are seeing that we're moving towards.
Excellent. Donnie, let's just stick with you here. Let's talk a little bit about the innovations in this space. Certainly, as the attackers become more innovative, there's going to be more innovative solutions. What are some of those innovations, and what are some of your biggest concerns about that?
Yeah, so to carry on that point, so we find that in our conversation, so we have spoke to, over the past 2-3 years, we have spoke to countless ISPs, together with our team, Alex, Zen, and the management included. So what we found, what we realized is most of the CSPs today are still reliant on traditional on-premise appliances, where they have acquired a couple of years back. And because of this reliance to these technologies, okay, and these old traditional approaches, they are now exposed, and they are left with left clueless as in how to handle the new and upcoming attacks, as evident with the poll that we saw earlier, 35% being no, right? So at Nexusguard, a lot of our micro innovations happens around the way we deliver the service and the way that our partners consume the service. But I think at Nexusguard, our main focus in terms of innovation and our efforts are placed around what we call artificial intelligence and automation. So I know artificial intelligence is a big, marketing word, and it's overused everywhere. But at Nexusguard, how we approach this innovation is so that we can actually keep up, in our business, okay, in order for our strategies and our mitigation technologies to be useful and be able to effectively and efficiently protect our partners as well as our customers. We use the AI and automation to keep up and hopefully be able to stay steps ahead of the evolution of these new attacks. So we have taken machine learning, supervised and unsupervised learning, and then combine it with our best traditional approaches that we have experienced, that we have gathered over the past 10 years. And then what we have done is we have created new context-aware technologies and intelligence to enhance the way our systems detects and mitigate attacks. So ultimately, the reason why we do this is because in our business, this allows us to deliver our solutions to our CSP partners that can use it to create their own set of managed security services, and they can actually protect their own infrastructure and therefore be able to deliver a service to their end customers. And with AI automation, what it also addresses, okay, what we want to address with our innovations is also to take the human elements not completely away, but be able to scale with the attacks that we see nowadays. And then of course, to keep the cost of operations as well as the reliance on manpower to be as low as possible. So that, our partners that picks up our technology will be able to, spin up our services, okay, very quickly, and be able to pass that, value onto their customers, alongside with a significant amount of savings as opposed to traditionally trying to set up their own service.
Mm-hmm. So what about the future? I know I ask that a lot, but what is Nexusguard? You've got your eyes on the existing attacks today. You've got your eyes on the existing attacks for tomorrow. But let's look even beyond there. What is Nexusguard's focus going to be, a year from now?
So our eyes, okay. So Nexusguard's focus has never changed for the past 2-3 years. So our eyes are still set on this CSP space because like all the trends are pointing towards, we feel that the problems and all the challenges that the CSPs will be facing is going to just get worse, with 5G networks, with 100G backbones, upgrading and stuff like that. So our focus is to continue to enhance the way that we deliver our service, okay, so that we can actually deliver a true and smart hybrid solutions that can deliver, namely 3 things for our partners and our customers. First, okay, we'll be able to deliver, allow our partners to be able to deliver a seamless, a very simple to implement anti-DDoS solution that is not limited by a CSP network size. Okay, regardless of the CSP network size and resources and capabilities, be able to step into this market, okay, to immediately elevate their offering, okay, elevating from a traditional layer 2 company, just offering access and transit service, to be able to elevate themselves quickly, to be able to deliver managed security services on top of their core access service. Number 2, with the innovations and our focus would be able to bring down significantly the cost to offer that solution, both in terms of scalability and in terms of being able to back up our partners in terms of mitigating the largest attack that is yet to come. Simple illustration would be, a typical ISP might not have a lot of upstream capacity to be able to mitigate attacks that we see today. but together with the program and partnership with Nexusguard, okay, they can leverage on our global distributed infrastructure to take advantage of our 2.4 terabits of infrastructure, as well as the other partners within that same ecosystem, so that they do not have to actually bring on those attacks themselves, okay, and therefore saving a lot of cost on that. And then last but not least, okay, our focus is to create our productize, or rather create our solution in a way that we help our CSP partners productize, okay, and deliver a complete set of solutions that the consumers of the CSPs can immediately consume. You know, typically during our conversations with CSPs, we realize that, you know, when it comes to having the technology within their infrastructure, that might not be a problem, but to turn that into a service, you know, with all the SLAs, with documentation, with the processes, you know, the best practices and everything, including the service support, you know, billing, and actually all the other nitty-gritty details to actually deliver end service. That is usually one of the main challenges that the product house within the CSP would face. So our continued effort would be to streamline that process. And as such, today, we are proud to be able to claim to any of our partners that, you know, the moment you get on board with our program, a CSP that is only selling traditional services in terms of access and transit will be able to elevate themselves to be able to deliver to their customers a full suite of managed security services within a period of 90 days, okay, from end to end. So that's something that we are proud to, and of course, we will work towards shortening that implementation period, maybe even half the time in the near future.
Excellent, Donnie. Thank you very much for that. And team, thank you very much. We have done an amazing job of staying on task today. We've got about 15 minutes left of our time. So I am going to go ahead and open things up to Q&A. If my back, okay. We do have a couple of questions. Outstanding. Okay. First question, is it realistic for a small or regional ISP to have their own DDoS infrastructure? That's a great question. Alex, you want to take this one? Is it realistic for a small or regional ISP to have their own DDoS infrastructure?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just like Donnie was saying, now you have this program where, you know, you don't really have to come up with everything yourself. You don't have to have the expertise. You don't have to have the, you know, huge CapEx investment up front, and you're quickly able to launch your own infrastructure to compete against other perhaps larger ISPs in the region or even globally, right? So I think that's a realistic situation today.
Excellent. So the answer is yes. Outstanding. Next question. Thank you for that, Alex. As an ISP, is DDoS mitigation service a sunk cost, loss leader, or can it be a profit center? Donnie, I think you started to get to this a little bit. Would you want to expand a little bit? As an ISP, is DDoS mitigation a service a sunk cost, loss leader, or can I make it a profit center?
So was that directed at me? Yeah,
yes,
anyway,
sorry, Donnie, for you. Thank you.
So we have a slogan. We used to have this slogan we call turn business pains into gains, right? So turn your gain into business gains. So DDoS, I mean, we're in this business. So DDoS definitely has a place in any of the CSP's core service offering. What we have seen, and I'm sure CSPs feel this pain very clearly, you know, the challenges of maintaining their ARPU, average revenue per unit, maintaining their revenue, as well as defending their own numbers. So as the CSP's product become commoditized, you know, it's all about price war, dollar per meg, etc. So one of the ways that the DDoS could come in as form of a managed security services to be able to offer CSPs a way to differentiate themselves. It is no news that, you know, all the tier 1 carriers and even the tier 2 carriers are already offering, in a way, some form of managed security services in form of DDoS protection services on top of that. But there's still a lot of ISPs, especially the regional carriers, that are trying to catch up and expectation is also a thing. So nowadays, as customers become more educated, they'll be able to see the other offerings out there on the market today. And with DDoS becoming mainstream, DDoS is no longer something that is new. You see it every other day on the news. So customers are now expecting more than ever, more options, okay, especially with their current provider. So I wouldn't call it a sunk cost. I wouldn't call it anything else, but it has more or less become a basic expectation of your customers. If you are not able to even offer that as a offering and an option, free or otherwise a premium service to your customers, then you're going to fall out of favor. Your customers are simply going to go on to the next better provider, simply put. So in a way, it becomes a profit center then. So you can use, if you look at DDoS as a enabler for you to be able to get into markets that you have not gotten into before, that would greatly help your business. So an example of a success case. So one of the carriers, one of ISP, regional ISPs in Asia, which has never had a foot into the government services because they didn't have a managed security offering. So they were traditionally offering, broadband services, IP transit, connectivity, internet access to enterprise and home users. And they have never been able to get a foot into the government services because they didn't offer any security services. And with the partnership with Nexusguard, okay, with us being able to inject our technologies, process, and people into their business, what has happened is we've enabled them to now participate, become one of the main contenders for government security services, because now they have the ability to offer, on top of their access services, managed security offerings. So that definitely has brought them new revenue. So that's actually a profit center for them now.
Very good, thank you. I think we'll take one more question. All right, here's another fun one. Do you think that the advent of artificial intelligence will solve the DDoS problem without the need of human intervention? Will AI mean that we humans aren't going to be needed to solve DDoS issues? Donnie, you want to just keep going with that one?
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, we're pushing the boundaries of AI every day, right? Personally, I think we are not at a stage where they can totally replace humans yet. I mean, don't get me wrong, okay, AI can be very, very smart. But in terms of DDoS, when it comes to, which I mentioned earlier, the attackers are now getting very creative, okay, and they are very innovative. And our SOC still plays a very important role, okay, based on their experience and based on our humans' ability to react to unscripted situations, are still necessary in our day-to-day design and delivery of services. Although we have taken all those aspects, in a way that our humans are providing response to unscripted situations, we put that all into, we pump all those data into machine learnings and to our AI system for modeling and stuff like that. But the human factor remains a very important aspect of the whole solution. And we still believe that a competent SOC is the anchor of what would make a solution reliable. And that is also why, even though with our AI technologies that we are boosting it up, we have also put in special efforts to create a branch within Nexusguard with what we call Nexusguard Academy, that is aimed to provide professional training courses to our partners and their staff, so that we will together with our partners try to overcome the human shortage, or rather the human technical expertise shortage in the cybersecurity field.
Great, Donnie, thank you very much. And thank you to the panelists and to the attendees. I think we learned a lot. We probably could talk about this for the entire afternoon or evening, as it were. Again, thank you to our panelists. Thank you to Nexusguard and to our viewers at home. Again, stay healthy and be well, and we'll see you soon.